Hi folks, I'm Chuck Black. We're doing 52 weeks of Python in 10-minute sessions, and today's topic is strings. Now in any programming language, and this is true in Python also, strings are going to be very important. We're going to be doing lots of stuff with strings. We'll be manipulating them. Why are strings so important? Well, everything that you're looking at right here in this screen is actually a string, and the same thing is true over here except for these little icons here in the graphs. Even here, although the graph itself is not a string, all of these things here, there had to be some string manipulation done with that. So strings, super important, and we are going to be looking at them in this lesson. Now, things that we're going to be doing here, we're going to look at a whole bunch of stuff. There will be instances where we are stripping strings, we're going to be splitting strings, we're going to be comparing strings, we're going to be finding substrings in a string, we're going to be finding substrings and separating out portions of things like versions. We're going to be looking at some output from a device and trying to gather information from it that makes sense, and the same with an arc table. So let's get started. Looking at this code. It's out there. You can look at this code yourself and run it yourself. Just a heads up, I probably won't get through everything. There's a lot of code in this file that does a lot of different stuff, so we'll get through what we can in our 10 minutes of time. So here is my string. My variable name is device1 underscore stir. I know this is a string because it has double quotes around it. You can use double or single quotes, remember, but you have to be consistent. Also, PyCharm is handy, and it has put it in green because it's able to recognize strings. Now you can see what I've done here is I have a name for my device and a vendor and a model and an operating system for my device. I've also added things like spaces here and there, and I have commas separating these things. So we're going to manipulate this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to get these into their separate components. So what we're going to do in order to do that, you notice the character that's separating these things is a comma. Maybe this is a CSV type data. And so how can I get these into independent components? Well, I can use the split function. Now device1 underscore str, remember, it is a variable that is a string in Python. Here's something to remember and write down if you haven't heard it before. I'll be talking about it later. Everything is an object. That means that even though this is just a string, I can perform functions or operations on it. And so I'm going to take this string and I say dot, and then I give the function name that I want to do, and the thing that I want to do is split, and I'm going to split it based on commas. So what do you think I will end up with? I'm going to end up with a list that has each of these items that are separated by the comma. Remember, I did split based on comma. And if we look up here, sure enough, what is this? Well, the data is showing me that it's a list because I have square brackets. And the items in my list, the first thing is a string. It's itself a string, but it's just the first part. And then the second item in my list is this right here. And the third part is this thing right here. So don't get confused. Be very vigilant when you look at this. This is data. It is a list, and the items in the list are separated by commas. This, on the other hand, what is it? To Python, it is just a string. All right, do you notice the difference? This isn't a list right here. What I've done is I've taken device1 str and I've split it so that it becomes a list. And that is the first operation that I am going through on this string. Now, I don't like this extra white space that we see here, the blank, so I want to get rid of that. One way to get rid of white space in Python is to use strip. So what I'm going to do is the same thing that I did before, except I'm going to do a strip on my string first of all, and then I'm going to do a split. And if I look at the output, it looks good for right here, but guess what? All of the interior pieces, that would be this and this, are not doing what I want. So I haven't succeeded in getting rid of all of the spaces that I want to get rid of. And the reason is that first thing that happened when I did my strip, I did a strip on the entire string. So it got rid of this and it got rid of this, but it kept all the other stuff. So unfortunately, I haven't achieved my goal. Okay, so my next great idea for removing these blanks is going to be to do a replace. And the replace function, basically I'm saying if you see a blank, I just want you to get rid of it, and then we do a split. How's that going to work? It sounds like a good idea. So here basically device 1 removed blanks using replace. On the surface, this all looks great until I look closer. Guess what? Catalyst space 2960, it removed that space. I didn't want it to remove that space. So clearly this is not going to solve my problem for me. Now the next thing that I do is just for kicks. Not only am I getting rid of a blank, but I'm also replacing a comma with a colon. I'm not actually sure why I did that. I guess it looks interesting. So basically I'm not doing a split. Notice that this thing here is a string, and there's no spaces anywhere, but that's just another manipulation that I did. So how about this idea? I'm going to do a loop in order to do this. I'm going to do a loop, and when I go through my loop, first thing I'm going to do is I am going to say for item in device1 string.split. Remember, this returns a list, so I'm iterating through the list. And the item, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say item, and then for every one of the items, every one of those things in between commas, I am going to actually do a strip. And now I'm going to print it out, and let's see what happens. I'm saying device1 using loop and strip for each item. Guess what? Hallelujah. It's done what I wanted it to do. There are no leading or trailing blanks in this, and I preserved the space inside Catalyst. So I've done this. Okay, the next thing I do in this code is I use list comprehension, and I'm not going to go over it. You can consult the lesson that exists on comprehensions, and I will be talking about it later on in this 10-minute series, so we're ignoring that for now. Now you can compare strings, and one of the things that I'm demonstrating here is that case is significant, and so in this situation it's not going to match appropriately, but if I want to ignore case, then I don't have a comparison that ignores it, so I have to do lowercase for both of these, or just one if I know that one is all lowercase, so I can do lower or upper in order to do that. One thing here that I want to show you too is that not only can I do replace and split and strip, but I can also do find. So if I have a string here, I've got a string that's actually a version string from a device, and I want to find a particular substring within it, I can use find, and what will end up happening is it will return to me the index where it found it. And you can see here it found the substring, and I printed out the location at which it found it. Okay, there's some more stuff here, and all the way down to the bottom you can see that I'm trying to parse output from a device, and the code to do it is fairly complicated. I'm not going to be able to come close to describing this in just our short time together. So I'm going to say, if you want to understand it, you can look at it on your own. You can also consult the long form version of this lesson and go to the part where I describe this, and you can find that. Okay, let's quickly review what we talked about. We created a string here, and in this string there are a number of different fields, if you will. And so what we did was we did the split function in order to take the string and create a list of the individual components. We then attempted to use strip to get rid of white space, but that only did it at the beginning. At the end, we did a replace, which got rid of our characters. Unfortunately, it got rid of the character that we wanted within the name of the product itself, or the model. And so we looked at doing the same thing and replacing comma with colon, and ended up with a string in that situation. We did a loop where we finally succeeded in getting rid of all the white space and preserving white space appropriately. We ignored the list comprehension. We looked at how you compare strings, and that if you want to ignore case, then you need to do dot lower or dot upper, and we looked at how you can find a substring within a string, and we ignored a bunch of the other stuff. That's it. Remember to write this code if you want to really learn it and understand it. You can listen to the long form lesson if you want to find out about the things I didn't have time to discuss. hopefully it makes sense and you learned a bit about strings. Thanks for listening.